This video is going to be a quick review over how to add, subtract, and multiply polynomials. We're first going to start off by adding. The reason you can tell that this is an adding problem is right in the parentheses there's a big old plus sign, so you know that you have to add. When you add, you are combining like terms. In order for it to be a like term, it has to have the same variable. A variable is a fancy word for a letter in math, and it has to have the same exponent. So if I was going to combine 9x cubed, the only like term like it is this negative 2x third to the third power. So I am going to add that. And when you add them, you only add the coefficients. So I'm really adding 9 and negative 2, which combines to be 7. I only bring down the variable and the exponent. They do not change. I only add the coefficients when we're adding. So my next biggest exponent is the squareds term. I can add 5x squared and negative 8x squared, which will combine to be a negative 3x squared. And my last thing to combine is my x's. I have a positive 11x and a positive 9x, which would be combined to be 20x. It is always good to write it from biggest exponent down to the smallest exponent. That's proper standard form for math. So double check to make sure they're in order, but all you do is add the coefficients when you are adding of only like terms. Subtracting is very similar to adding. The only difference, you'll notice there's a minus sign here, and I like to go ahead and distribute the negative sign to everything in the parentheses that is right behind it. That way I can treat it just like an addition problem. So first thing we do when we have a minus sign here is I'm going to distribute this negative 1 times the negative 2x, which is going to turn it into a positive. This negative times this negative makes it a positive. And the negative times the positive makes it a negative 7. So once I distribute that, I can turn it into a plus sign and treat it just like an addition problem that we did in the previous example. So I just combine my like terms. My biggest exponent are the squareds, so I'm going to combine a 1x squared and a 2x squared, which combines to be 3x squared. My next biggest exponent is a positive 8x and a 10x, which combines to be 18x when I add them up. My last two is I have a negative 6 and a negative 7, combines to be negative 13. And that is everything. So that's all you do for adding and subtracting is combine your like terms. All right, this next problem is multiplying. And you know it is multiplication because if you look in between these parentheses right here, you see no plus sign, you see no minus sign, so we know it has to be a multiplication problem. So when we do multiplication, I like to multiply using the box. This way you make sure that you don't miss multiplying any terms. Some students like to do this times this, this times this, this times this. Then you do this, this, this. You totally can do that, just don't miss any because then you'll miss the problem. When we do the box, it ensures that we make sure we multiply everything times everything else because we fill in all the boxes. That's why I encourage it. So you just need to draw an appropriate size box based on how many terms you have. You notice in this problem that we have a binomial, 4x plus 2. So I'm putting that on the side with the 2 boxes, times a trinomial. So 6x squared, it's probably minus x plus 2. So it's got to be an appropriate size box to fit the problem that you're trying to do. Then you multiply to get the inside of the box. So 6x squared times 4x would be 24x to the third. Notice when we're multiplying, you add exponents, and the big numbers, you just regular multiply. So make sure you're adding those exponents. Keep on multiplying. 4x times negative x is going to be negative 4x squared. 2 times 4x is 8x. 6x squared times 2 is 12x squared. Negative x times 2 is negative 2x. And 2 times 2 is 4. So we multiply to fill every box in. To write out our answer, we are going to combine any like terms that are in our box, starting with the biggest exponent. So my biggest exponent here is 24x cubed. There is nothing to combine it with, so I'm just going to write it down. My next biggest exponent is 12x squared. I'll do this in green. And I can combine it with this negative 4x squared, so I'm going to add them up, which is going to be 8x squared, combining like terms again. Next two numbers are, as I have a negative 2x and a positive 8x. If I combine those, that'll be 6x. And my last one is plus 4. Nothing to combine it with, so I just bring it down. So that's what you do for multiplication. I just wanted to note on this problem, when you see a squared like this, that means it's got two of these. If you think about what x squared means, that means x times x. So if I'm squaring this, that means I'm doing 3x plus 2 times 3x plus 2. So this is another multiplication problem, and you would just need to draw an appropriate size box to be able to multiply 3x plus 2 times 3x plus 2. Now we're going to multiply to get the inside of the box just like we did in the previous problem. 6x, 6x, 2 times 2 is 4. Combine my like terms, 9x squared, it's the only x squared term. Combine my x's to be 12x, remember we're adding when we combine our like terms, plus 4 for this last one. So I just didn't want you to be confused by that problem. It's just a multiplication problem. You've got two sets of the same parentheses. When we find area of a rectangle, remember that the formula is multiply the length times the width. If my length is x plus 1 and my width is 2 plus 3x, all I have to do is multiply those together. Again, using the box, I can multiply x plus 1 and 2 times 3x. So if I just multiply everything like we've been doing, 3x squared, 2, and 3x, my answer is 3x squared. Combine my like terms, and that is all we would get for the area. And the last geometry term we have here is perimeter. How do you find the perimeter? Well, remember when you're finding the perimeter, you just add up all the sides. And when if we added all these terms together, we would just combine our like terms again. So I noticed my biggest term here is 3x cubed, and there's nothing to combine it with. I want to combine my x squared's term. There's an x squared plus 2x squared plus 2x squared. That gives me 5x squared terms. If I think that's a negative x, a positive 3x, so that'll be 2x. Oh, that's not an x. So that would be plus 2x. And last I have this lonely little 1 here, so plus 1. So finding perimeter is just adding up all the sides by combining like terms. So that's a mini review over adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials.